Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here increasingly more and more with Kevin Noon. Kevin, how's it going?
Good start to the day, especially when you're like me and you sleep all day. Wake up to a big commitment for Ohio State. Trajen Odom just announced that he will be a member of the Buckeyes. So I think that there's a lot of celebrating going over at the Woody right now.
Yeah, I've already seen Larry Johnson already put out a tweet. So, yes, Trajan Odom from North Carolina, the number 31 defensive lineman, which means number 31 defensive tackle, essentially. 6'4", 285 pounds, out of Weddington High School in Matthews, North Carolina. Number 283 player overall, number 7 player in the state. Adds to Ohio State's class, which I believe now is at 21. And I think this is their first true defensive tackle in the class as I look quickly. Having seen London Merritt recently tweeting pictures, I know there are some questions like, would he grow into a defensive tackle? He still looks like a defensive end to me, and that's not a bad thing. But Trajan Odom, watched some of his huddle recently, and quick and powerful, and it's interesting to watch high school offenses try to deal with him, and it's not very easy. Sometimes they'll try to just let him go and run the play away from him, and he tracks them down and he gets them in the backfield before they can get to outside the tackle or anything like that. So a good get, somebody that a lot of programs wanted. And I generally, if you can go get one of the top 10 players in North Carolina, I say go do it, because that's a pretty good talent state, especially on the defensive line.
I was talking with our Devin Radcliffe, who was a
Mm-hmm.
football coach in the state of North Carolina and has coached against Weddington, and said that in the 4 matchups or however many matchups he had against them, they outscored like 200-4 or something. That, Weddington dudes are just different. So this is a huge get. This, though, is not a situation of where, well, we want to get ourselves established in the school, so we're going to take this guy who might be borderline. There's no borderline when it comes to Trajan Odom, who really is a 3-tech or 5-tech, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. People have been concerned, what does this mean for their pursuit of Malik Autry? Malik Autry is a 1-tech. He's a nose. So there is no overlap. I mean, there are other potential D tackles still on the board, but Ohio State is not taking just one. When you look at Ty Hamilton, Tywone Malone, Tyleek Williams, all guys who could very well be at the end of their run with the Buckeyes after this season. So, this isn't quarterback. You've got to take multiple.
Yeah, Trajan Odom. And I see some people asking, who is he? Well, he, in terms of who he is, he had offers, and that's really what you want to know. Who was offering them that was really, really good other than Ohio State? Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Coach Prime. When you are a high school player and Coach Prime is like, hey, we'd like you on our team, you must be pretty good, because he only recruits like 4 or 5 high school players a year, and he will not go into your home. You'll have to come to him. But a lot of schools, big time schools, going after Trajan Odom, Michigan included. And so now they've got one defensive tackle in the class, as a mess, as another great addition. And you go to North Carolina, you're competing against SEC schools for defensive linemen. And when you win those battles, that gives you a pretty good shot of winning the battles on the field down the road, when you do face more the SEC types of schools that Ohio State will certainly face down the road. So getting somebody from that region is pretty good. The football extraordinaire. Kevin, you want to take this one?
I'm trying to remember if there's somebody for sure on the second. I know on the third is Justin Hill out of Winton Woods. Buckeye Huddle will be there with live coverage. I'm not sure what the staffing is going to be aside from myself, but I will be down there for that. But there certainly will be opportunities. I think we're going to see a lot of players making their decisions from today all the way to the start of like high school practice. For, another name that's deciding today, not going to end up at Ohio State, running back Jordan Davison out of Mater Dei in California. He will be announcing at 12 p.m. Pacific, so 3 p.m. Eastern.
And what's he got? Michigan and
Oregon
Oregon
and Alabama.
and Michigan already has 2 running backs committed, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see if he'll be willing to be a third running back there. We'll see. Wayne Taylor with Super Chat. Thank you very much. Throw in a question if you got one, and we'll get to it. Or just Super Chat and compliment us. That is even better. But we will accept any questions that you've got. We've got some stuff to talk about. Whatever you guys want to talk about, that's what we're here for on a Friday. And so now another defensive commit for Ohio State. As I said, they've got 21. We talked yesterday, the day before, on the last commitment show about the number of this class being upwards of at least 27. If I set the number at 28 and a half, where are you going?
I think it needs to be over. It needs to be over. But, and as we talked about on the Brody Lennon commitment show, again, they're going into this year sub 85. Even if they do give a couple of those to deserving walk-ons, truthfully, in the scholarship count, they're sub 85 when we start looking at the number, when we circle back to 25. I think we're going to see a mass exodus. But conversely, a mass exodus could create the necessity for some portal guys too. So that's the one thing that could keep the number down. If, okay, we need to add 35 new players before foot meets leather in 2025. Would that be like 28-7? Would that be 29-6? Would that be 30-5? I mean, I'm not sure. So I don't, 28 and a half over. I think it's going to be 29. I think it's going to be 29.
And when you're losing so many veterans, it is kind of difficult replacing them with younger guys. But I don't know that next year's roster, I can't believe we're already talking about that before fall camp even begins on this year, but I don't think next year's roster is overly young because you got like guys like Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, and they're going to Hero Canoe are all going to be in their 4th years next year as, veterans, at least upperclassmen who are going to be asked and tasked with taking over the defensive line, never having started a game at this point, and hopefully Ohio State's hoping they won't be starting any games this year. But those are some of your new starters, if Hero Canoe or whomever, and they don't really have any starting experience, but they're older players. And the offensive line, you're going to be looking at 3rd and 4th year guys stepping in there as new starters. So I do wonder how veteran they'll need to go. I think, as Ryan Day talks about, how you use it to solidify things and fill gaps. And there will be some gaps, but they've been recruiting pretty well over the last couple of years. So you wouldn't expect too many gaps, but the ability to use the portal as a supplemental thing and more is going to be continue to be a fascinating thing to watch, because it's not going away and it's not slowing down anytime soon, I don't think.
Exactly. T. Neal Weddington plays Providence Day week 1. Nice matchup against David Sanders Jr. And wouldn't that be something if that were a pair of Buckeyes right there at that point? I know that Mark Givler spent some time down in Charlotte, has some in-law family down there, so that would probably be something that he would go and see. Unfortunately, I don't know when North Carolina week 1 matches up against the schedule. I have this team cover. They're called the Buckeyes. Maybe you've heard of them. I know. Poor baby. But yeah, it keeps me away from a lot of high school games because of those darn necessities. And I don't necessarily want to be driving the West Virginia Turnpike overnight into Saturday morning. I don't even remember, where's Tom Moore when you need him to know how many days away the Akron game is.
Friday, August 26th is Weddington at Providence Day.
That's before the season. We can all go head down there and get some barbecue. And
maybe you can. I'll be. What Ohio high school games am I going to be going to the first couple of weeks? Because that's really the only real chance that we have to spend time doing that and plan it out. And so, there's
the Tavian St. Clair beat.
Well, and that's the other thing. There's going to be so much Tavian St. Clair, and rightfully so. It's going to be like, well, if everybody else is there, where can I go and be the only person at that game. Because it's always funny when we cover, like, we're all out somewhere on the first week of the high school season because there's no college football. And you're thinking, I'm going to be the only one at this game. And then, like, 4 other outlets are at this game that you're at because, what else are you going to do? So you're never going to see a Tavian St. Clair game alone. That's for sure.
No. The way you would is if Ohio State was on the road and had to be a Friday travel day and you just didn't travel or something like that. I mean, Oregon, like the week of Oregon would be the week if somebody wanted to go and do that.
Gee, no kidding. And that's even if there's Thursday night games, go catch those all by yourself as well. Jordan Kapler asking, no Tom Moore on a live stream? About time someone at Buckeye Huddle listens to him. Tom is taking some him time, family time. They are, I don't even want to get into it. It's not important. He's not here. That's all we need to know. That's all you need to know. And
Mr. Superman,
for Jordan,
Mr.
yeah,
Superman,
and Jordan can celebrate no Tom Moore, but he'll eventually be back at some point.
Gary Kay says it would be great if we could flip Malik Autry, and that's the move that Ohio State's going after right now. There's a lot of other stuff. I saw a question kind of talking about some other names, so we'll get into that one in a minute. But Malik Autry, massive human being, 6'6", 320. I mean, he would be the only other one on Ohio State's roster compared to to Cade McDonald. A guy that has his own gravitational pull, if you will. But I like Ohio State's chances with Autry, but you got to remember, he lives in Opelika, which is the shadow of Auburn. So it's going to be really, really tough. I mean, this is a different situation. Let's go back several years when Ohio State got a commitment from Antoine Simmons out of Pioneer High School in Ann Arbor. Mm-hmm. And then Ohio State kind of grew apart. He ended up going to Michigan State. I understand that that's the high school in the belly of the beast and everything else, but it just means more. It just means more in the SEC. So this Autry, even if they flip him July 1, you're going to have to play defense for your life. But the good news is you're already going to have to pour resources into the state of Alabama to hold on to Naeem Offer, to hold on to Zion Grady. So modern recruiting, yo.
It is interesting if you look at Malik Autry's rankings. He is the number 29 player in 24/7's own rankings. He is not among the top 300 on threes rankings. Like, he's a 3-star in one and will be a 5-star in another at this point, because 24/7's their top 32 guys are 5 stars. And then you've got ESPN at 201, Rivals at number 157. ESPN, the voice of reason in all of this. Who could have possibly thought?
Who would have thunk it?
Football extraordinaire. If you got a D lineman over Georgia, that means he's good. Plus, this is a win to get over on the SEC in Georgia. I completely agree, because it's not just getting something for you; it's keeping something from somebody else that you will invariably run into over the next 4 or 5 years. So, and I think we would all agree one of the reasons the SEC has been so good is because of all of those Southeastern defensive linemen that they can keep in the region. So when you can go and get something from them, that's significant. And then if you can pair him with Malik Autry and whoever else is coming, because I don't think it's not just going to be those. If they could get Autry, it wouldn't just be those two defensive tackle. And there are others out there, and they need as many as they can get in this cycle, because they've got some younger guys, but you don't know who's going to hit necessarily. So you can't just assume everybody's going to hit. You've got to prepare for the worst in the recruiting on the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. I'm watching the cat get into trouble. So it's so important to be able to, because we look at year after year, where Ohio State is the North's Big Ten team, but where does Ohio State not necessarily match up? And I say that it's probably, not only the trenches, but the defensive trenches. So being able to bring SEC players to Ohio State under the tutelage of Larry Johnson seems like a win-win to me if you're an Ohio State fan. And I mean, win-win-win, because 1, you're getting the players, 2, you're getting them coached up by the GOAT in Larry, and 3, you're keeping them from the SEC. So there's so much winning here, so much winning.
So a question about Maxwell Roy, who from a new this is a different type of is this St. Joseph's Prep in Philly as well, or is this a St. Joseph's in
No,
somewhere else?
This is the same one where Isaiah West is, and where a couple of former Buckeyes, one current Syracuse player, all cut their teeth.
And so he's similarly ranked to other guys we're talking about, where top 200-ish type player. And again, if you can get somebody from Philadelphia and it keeps them out of Penn State, that's another one where that's a win. Isaiah West, you go get him, the best running back in the state. South Penn State got a commitment from another running back in state recently. And if you can get the best guys in your rival states, and Penn State, I'll use rival loosely, but it's always a good sign. Wayne Taylor, speaking of the Oregon trip, who catches the cod of shame? Well, the thing is, and we could talk about this off air, Kevin, but I'll ask about it now. Have we called about that with the
Big Ten? No, we've not called with the Big Ten. I need to do that. But for Oregon, all the nights except for the last one for sure are 2 beds and a sleeper sofa. Granted, we're staying in Portland. We're not staying in Eugene. I knew the date of the Oregon game 24 hours before it came out publicly, but so did everybody else on the beat. But so I could have gotten in on other hotels, but there just weren't any great options. We're all a bunch of old men. So if we could really prevent somebody from having to sleep on a sleeping bag or on the cot of shame, we do that. But that last night, we stay out at the airport because we fly out crazy early. I don't remember if that's a 3-bed or 2-bed situation.
Well, and that the cot of shame will be decided by the game the week before and the bold predictions there. So there's no telling. It's going to be Tom, but there's no telling at this point who it will be. Terry Slusher, man of the people. David Sanders posted on the Odom commitment, future teammate, ? At this point, things have gone so well for Ohio State that I think it's okay to be optimistic about landing David Sanders. Now, landing a commitment from David Sanders, and then Buckeye fans will just clench and hope like crazy that it sticks, because a commitment just means other programs are going to have to come at him harder and up any kind of offers and things like that. But I think everybody feels pretty good about this, because Ohio State has done everything that not everything that they can do, everything that Sanders and his people, I think, have wanted. And it's not just a monetary thing, but like they're presenting them with a good look at the future, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to play, I think, very early. So there's obviously a lot to like about Ohio State. And at this point, you're seeing Mark has talked about it, other people have talked about it, where if you had to pick somebody right now, I think you take Ohio State. But do you take Ohio State over the field?
I do at this point. I've gotten that far along. Now, I'm not going to say it's a lock. I'm not going to say any of that. If David Sanders would announce that he's having an announcement ceremony, I would go, but I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But I wouldn't know for sure. But I've talked to some people at other schools, reporters who cover recruiting at other schools, on his list. And everything, like the one strong constant there is Ohio State. But I'm not positive, but I'm close. I'm getting there. Mika wants to know, this guy's great. Why is Odom so underrated? Let me ask this. If Tony and I weren't covering Ohio State, if you all weren't Ohio State fans, let's say that you are all Maryland fans, I think Odom would not be considered underrated in a lot of ways, because this is probably like one of the biggest fish on the board for them. But I think in the midst of names, certainly, David Sanders on offense, certainly Malik Autry, Zion Grady, there's a lot of underrating going on there. Now, as for why national analysts may have him underrated, I don't know, because it's not like he's playing at some no-name anonymous school against like the smallest classification in North Carolina. He's at Weddington. So he is a known quantity. There are 3 stud 2026s behind him on that roster, at least. I've heard there's a couple more. I don't know why there's such a huge, wide swath, but I will, in terms of where the rankings are, I will say this, that the state of North Carolina turns out a lot of talent, but still seems to be a little bit of a fringe in terms of where assets are allocated. I think that there's more coverage in Georgia. There's more coverage in some of these other states, and maybe Odom just hasn't been seen enough. I don't know. That's just a guess.
Well, and we see that all the time. If you camp at the rivals camp, but don't camp at another one where you'll get the bump, not because rivals thanks you for coming necessarily, but because they saw you and their people saw you. And so they've had an opportunity, and the next bump for some guys won't come until like 4 games into the season, because you get past the camp and the combine circuit and you have nothing else to move somebody up. The only thing you have is to move people down, because other players are moving up from being at camps and combines. So I think you'll have an opportunity in the season to move up, but also the NFL is littered with 3-star defensive tackles. And Ohio State has had their fair share. And, you can talk about Devon Hamilton being like the number 1,000 player, Ty Hamilton being slightly ahead of him in those rankings. And so they're not going to be able to catch everybody, but it is interesting with that kind of offer list, and correct itself here shortly, because you were in the rivals side of things for a long time, Kevin. Like, are there people who maybe bristle at the thought that the coaches know more than them, and so they kind of, you'll see Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia offer, and some people will try to think, yeah, I know better. He's not that good.
I was at rivals for a long time, and I think I saw a shift and a change when I started there. I think that there was more weight put into offer lists. So, these coaches know who they're looking at. But the thing is, too, is I think that certain programs were given more credit than others. So it wasn't necessarily like, oh, because he has this offer, therefore it's great. But, oh, Alabama offered him, Notre Dame offered him, whatever. Then I think we saw a little bit more of a move away from I've got to be agnostic of that. This is what I've seen, and I've always felt that that's difficult, because when you're doing a top 250, what's the difference between 161 and 162 when one of them's a defensive tackle and another one of them is a slot receiver? I mean, it's really hard to do any of that, but I think it just kind of goes down to the individual scout of how they handle stuff. And there's even the dynamics of who pounds the table louder in the room when they're having the rankings meetings. And that's been problematic in the past. I mean, as something that I've seen in trying to defend North or the Midwest. And it's like, you really, please go in and die on that hill for me. And they didn't. And the kid was ranked too low, and I heard about it for the remainder of the cycle.
It's all your fault. All your fault that Ohio State ended up having a 3-star instead of a 4-star.
I tried. Malik Achi just did out the eyes over the Trajen Odom commitment. So everybody's playing the game.
When is he scheduled? Is it? Well, I mean, he's already committed. So
he's already committed, but he has said to another outlet that he would like to make a decision here soon, inferring flipping to Ohio State or shutting down and sticking with Auburn until Alabama comes knocking.
I guess you do have to let people know that you're still looking. That way they know to keep offering, if you know what I mean.
I'm going to run 2 questions together with just quick updates. Mika Hanna asking about Dorian Brew and then asking about Justin Hill. So let's start with Dorian Brew. By all accounts, a really good visit. It's a rare time when somebody has a bad official visit. we're closing in on a decision time for him. I don't know a date. I like Ohio State's chances here. I think that it's Ohio State or Texas. I know you're really going out on a limb, but I'm cutting LSU out. I'm cutting Oregon out. I think it's Ohio State or Texas, and it's largely because Dorian Brew is kind of somebody who's close to his family, and I think that he needs to have that family unit close. So those two offer that. So that's why those are my two finalists there. With Justin Hill, I wouldn't be going down to Winton Woods if I didn't feel pretty good about Ohio State's chances. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's true. I'm not going down there to go. Buckeye Huddle is not part of a network. I don't need to go down there to cover it for the good of the network or anything else. If he's not going to Ohio State, Kevin's not going to Cincinnati.
Rusty, Jesse, the maximum number of defensive tackles Ohio State takes this year. I mean, that depends on who wants to come in. I think if some of the top guys want to come in, but I don't know, does it go over 3? I mean, let's just where do you see in this class in terms of London Merritt? Like, are you calling him a defensive end or a defensive tackle when we talk about
He's
this?
an end to me right now.
All right, so
I think you take a 1 in Malik Autry,
mm-hmm.
and if Malik Autry says no, I mean, ones don't grow on trees. Yeah. They're just, they're a rare beast. So then you're not going to have that. But we're just playing best case scenario because Rusty is asking the max number, so that would infer in a positive situation. So 1, like 2 3s, and then maybe like a Jason Moore coming in because Jason Moore is all in on tackle now. Yeah. Maybe a hybrid. So and then with that, you're just kind of putting that into your defensive end number too. So that's kind of where I'm at because they're going to lose 3. I really think they're going to lose 3. I mean, you're losing Ty Hamilton, you're losing Ty Leak. I mean, if Tywone Malone has a big year, he's gone. I mean, he's been in college for a few years now. He's not, some young pup. So I think that you can't always necessarily go 1 for 1. It's like, okay, well, we lost 3, so we get 3. But this is one of these things where they need to keep adding to the room because while they have, we kind of know who the next generation is, the Hero Canoes and the Jason Moores and Caden McDonald's. You got to keep that. You got to keep that number high.
There also has to be somebody there for them. There has to be a third guy out there, and I don't know exactly who that would necessarily be right now, but that's also the great thing about the portal. And you talk about Tywone Malone, like that's a guy, him or anybody else. If they don't play this year, and you have a decent shot of pushing them out. Basically, if they don't play, they might head to the portal. So that's something else that Larry Johnson's going to have to think about and plan for, and know that if you're not playing somebody this year in their 3rd or 4th year, they're going to have to go. They're going to want to go somewhere else and finally get some playing time, no matter what the situation looks like for them next year. But yeah, I don't know. I'd say 3. I don't know who the third would necessarily be at this point, and so I don't have any good names.
I don't have the hybrid guy on the board right now, but I'm going to be completely honest. Maxwell Roy was on my board and then was off my board and then suddenly was on my board again. So they do not share their board with us, or if they do, I'm not on the list. And so there are times that a kid will end up and then suddenly all this talk is around him. I'm like, are you sure about that? But there you go. So just a real quick one that I'm not going to put up about are we out for Trey McNutt? I think they're out for Trey McNutt at this point. I think he goes to Oregon probably, but maybe I'm leaping to conclusions, but that's the conclusion I'm at, is that he's just not going to be part of this class.
And I wonder how long they've kind of felt that way, because they've been pretty free with the safety commits. Like, they've not seemingly held anybody back from committing, and you'd think they might be a little bit more selective. And not that they're just accepting anybody, but the numbers, you can only take so many. So maybe they would have held a couple guys back until they know more from McNutt. Maybe they felt they did know more, and that's also a guy that some of these guys, if they want to come aboard, you find room for them regardless. And again, we've said it before on the show. You almost can't worry about the 85 number anymore, because if, like I said, they're under right now. If they could still be 2 over and they'd get it figured out. And the Matt Rule thing where they're going to be like 12 over or whatever, and you just make all of those people whole through NIL. And that's a way you can get away with having too many. I don't think it's going to be a tool where you can use it to have a class of like 40 or something like that, or but like to make a couple of guys like a Lorenzo Styles Jr. last year or whatever, like where you're not necessarily don't have room for them, but you can make room for them and make them whole through this whole ordeal.
Mika, one of our best recruiting fans. She always has a ton of questions and generates a ton of conversation. So appreciate you. Jake Cook needs a 4th star. I think that you have an opportunity of where he was probably rated pretty early in the cycle. Jake Cook, the player now, is different than what we saw 6 months ago. Now, is that going to be enough to light the fires of the recruiting rankers? I don't know. I think he probably, all things being equal, I think that he probably is a low 4-star, but fans care about the star rankings. The players say they don't, but they do. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the way that he's going to participate at Ohio State and practice and play and everything else. So we got several more updates. They will update all the way through January generally, so we'll keep an eye on that one.
Mika, another question here: do we flip Preston Bowman, and finally gets his offer a few days after, or a week or so after a really good camp performance? Ohio State's very well aware of him. Brian Hartline, very well aware of him. Commits to Kentucky, then gets his Ohio State offer the next day. A day late, a dollar short, perhaps, but also a Central Ohio guy who, why go to Ohio State? Why camp at Ohio State if you're not searching for an offer? So there is still that. I know as soon as he got the Ohio State offer, he talked to somebody, said, I'm still solid with Kentucky. We've heard that from players before. We've heard that from coaches. Just a few days ago, Texas A&M's baseball coach was asked about his future, and I'm an Aggie, I'm this, I'm that, and 12 hours later, he's signing a deal to become Texas's head coach. So,
whoops.
I mean, words get said, but ultimately, letters of intent get signed, and I kind of think that I'll just say this: would you be more surprised if he ends up at Kentucky or Ohio State?
I'd be more surprised if he ends up riding with Kentucky.
Same.
A lot of players do commit to Kentucky only to commit elsewhere in the cycle. I'm speaking in generalities. This is not this kid doesn't understand what commitment means, or that kid doesn't understand what commitment means. Let's not read into anything like that. I just think that his committing to Kentucky finally made Ohio State have to say, well, we really like him. We should probably offer. I think Ohio State's wide receiver board is just probably not coming together the way that fans would have expected. But we've talked about, and especially on the Skull Session Recruiting podcast with Mark, year in and year out, there is going to have to be a year that they don't sign the nation's number one wide receiver class. There's just going to have to be a year, and it appears that it's going to be this year. But with having Jeremiah Smith in as a true freshman, having Chris Henry Jr. a year behind you, I mean, you already kind of know what the board looks like if you're a player. That hasn't stopped some players from getting on board. We're still waiting on a decision from Phillip Bell. They're going to be fine at receiver. I promise you, they're going to be fine. And there have been a lot of times where when Ohio State signed 2 last year, when it signed Jeremiah and when it signed Mylan Graham, well, maybe they should get 1 or 2 glue guys, guys that are not, the 3-star, high 3-star type of guys that are going to stick around for 3, 4, 5 years just to make sure that there are numbers in the room. Well, might be happening this year. But I will say this: Preston Bowman is really talented. He goes to Pick North. I live maybe 3/4 of a mile from the Pick North campus. I've seen him in action multiple times. Just don't let the fact that he's committed to Kentucky sway you if you're not familiar with his game.
Yeah. AP says he's watching from Lyon, France. Lyon. Bonjour. That means, Kevin, that means hello in French. In case you didn't know, and for all the people out there that did not know.
Bonjour.
There's a couple good questions here from let's do this one. Clever and witty. Are we filling the void left by Nick Saban? It feels that way. We're not taking part in recruiting. We're taking over. Now let's slow down there in terms of taking over. And it's not recruiting. It's picking or whatever that sometimes gets thrown out there. Yeah. But the Ohio State is certainly taking advantage of Nick Saban's absence and the switch over from Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. Also, the situation going on at Auburn with Hugh Freeze in his second year. And we've talked about it before on this show. It's very similar to when the Texas schools were in a not great way, and Ohio State went in 2017. Got Jeff Okudah, J.K. Dobbins, Baron Browning. Elijah Gardner was a fourth guy in that class. If you want to throw Kendall Sheffield in there and a JC as well as part of that. So when you have those opportunities and then the players are there and there's kind of the reciprocity, you got to take advantage of it. And when there is interest from the players, you've got to go as hard as you can in that state, and it may be the only time you get to do it, or it may start something.
That, yes. And that's the big thing about it, starting something. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily always stick, because if Hugh Freeze and Kalen DeBoer both have good years this year, these 26s that you're talking to may feel differently, but take advantage of it in the short term and see if you can build a bridge for later. I mean, Ohio State certainly has a national recruiting footprint. The fact that I've seen 26 from Mississippi getting an offer, I mean, they're really going into areas that they don't generally, they're going into pools they don't normally swim in. And I think as a recruiting fan, that has to be exciting. I think as somebody who has to do Southern Swing, it's terrifying, because it means states that we normally drive through, we can't drive through. We have to stop, and we're doing stuff every single day.
Alabama is no longer a drive-through state. Omar Austin with the super chat. Tony, I'm not allowed to power pause myself, Kevin, so I'll let you read this one.
All right. Omar Austin with the super chat. Tony, how's it going? Love you guys.
I love you too, Kevin. Thank you very much. Going well. Thank you, Austin, for tuning in. As always, thank you for the grocery money. We do always appreciate that. Not our grocery money, your grocery money. One last thing on the recruiting in the South. USC now has had 5 players decommit from their 2025 class over the past year, and one's from Florida, 2 are from Florida, 2 are from Georgia, 1 is from Alabama. So that's now USC. I think I tweeted it out yesterday. USC just needs to stay out of the Southeast, and I know they've got a quarterback committed in Juju Lewis for now. But if they lose him as well, you know what? Just don't even cross the Mississippi. Just stay in your own lane, and you might be happier.
I was going to say they have so many options west of the Rockies of where them and Oregon are kind of the power products. You could maybe put Washington in there a little bit or whatever. But again, go back to the very beginning of the show. There's so much value on those big defensive linemen from the deep South. And I grew up in Southern California, but football players look different back then. They're just, I mean, when I went and saw Isaiah Gibson in Warner Robins, Georgia, I was like, holy crap. When I saw Malik Autry in Opelika, Alabama, I was like, holy crap. There was no kid at all like this back in my day.
This is an interesting question from Jim James. Do you guys think the portal and NIL have spread decent players around to lower and mid-ranked schools more or less than before these factors? Kevin, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I mean, the portal and NIL, I think, have created a little bit more disbursement of players. I was talking to a trainer, like an independent trainer, and he's like, I'm going to tell my guys in certain instances, you have to make the decision. Do you want to, are you going to go somewhere and maybe sit and you're going to get some money here, or you're going to get more money elsewhere? You need to take all of that into consideration. And I think he was speaking more on guys that, the end result was going to be getting out of this with a college degree, probably not going on to play football on a professional level. But I do think that the portal, especially the portal, creates a little bit more of a spread out amount of talent, because people are not as willing to sit. I mean, it used to be that if you transferred, you were going to have to sit a year, and that's gone. So people are much more willing to jump around. The problem is that you're also going to see a lot of players that are going to be at 5 schools in 5 years. Well, maybe not a lot of them, but you're certainly going to see them. But I think to Jim's point, that it's true. There is some more spread around of decent players, and I think we're still all trying to learn how to operate in an NIL and portal world.
And those players are spread around, but I think some of what you're starting to see as well as like a guy like Daquan Finn or Curtis Rourke doing well in the MAC and then transferring to Power 5 schools, now Power 4 schools. And so the rich get richer, as they say. But also that can also be a way for the smaller schools to actually get guys like, hey, come start for us for 2 or 3 years, and you will have an opportunity to go play somewhere else. Like Curtis Rourke didn't get an offer from Indiana, and he went to Ohio for 4 years or whatever. Like, that's going to these schools is now an avenue that you can take advantage of and play at. But when you can't, as you said, you can't hoard players anymore. Like the big schools can't. People are still surprised that Ohio State has 5 quarterbacks right now, and other schools are waiting for them to hit the market, and you go and grab them. But I think it's spread out, but you still have this thing where the big schools eventually still get the bulk of the talent, because a guy stars at San Diego State for 3 years and then becomes the top free agent for his senior year, and then he goes somewhere bigger. So in that way, they start out spread out, but eventually they congeal right in the middle of the Power 4.
Super chat. Omar Austin. Do we get David Sanders in your opinion? Follow up. How long can we keep Tom off the air with him throwing a tantrum? I will answer the first part, and Tony can answer the second part. We did talk about David Sanders a little earlier in the show. I am to the point of where I'm taking Ohio State over the field. Some other people may be right kind of at that precipice and not sure which side of that they want to fall on, but Ohio State really did answer all of the questions. Ohio State really won Mom over on the visit. I don't think it was a case that Mom didn't like Ohio State. I don't think that Mom liked that Ohio State was 6 hours away, but let me throw this out at you. Let's just say that he's worth a $2 million deal, $500,000 a year for 4 years. He can probably buy a few airline tickets for his family to fly and not have to do the 6-hour drive up 77 and then across Ohio through Meigs County and into Athens and up like that. So we'll see. Everything coming out of the visit was positive. How long he takes, how things rebound. At least we're kind of in a dead period right now. So not as much contact recruiting obviously going on because of that. But, dead period is a little bit of a misnomer. There still is communication. Let's see. But I think Ohio State gets them.
Yeah, and as we know, all communication during the dead period has to take place via a Ouija board. Follow up on that question: how long can we keep Tom off the air without him throwing a tantrum? Probably indefinitely. Like the last thing that guy wants to do is do his job. So he would stay off the air pretty happily. It's very annoying, and then we're not gonna just crap on him because he's not here. We would wait for him to come back, and that's when the tantrum would come, because we would do it to his face and just ridicule him mercilessly and have him on mute in the third box over here, and everybody would have a great time. And we would be like, super chat us what you want us to tell him. If like there's anything you've ever wanted to say to Tom, but have never had the opportunity, and just really want to get it off your chest, just go ahead and let us know, and we'll say it to him proudly and vociferously and honestly.
And repeatedly. Mika Hanna wants to know, could we really flip Turbo Rogers? And that is a running back out of Montgomery, Alabama, who's committed to Alabama. Ohio State does not look like it's taking 3 backs. Now, could Ohio State convince Bo Jackson, and could it convince Isaiah West that Anthony Rogers, Turbo Rogers, is an athlete, and convince Turbo Rogers that he is a running back? I don't know, but I will say this: when all the questions were coming up about the status of Jordan Davison, I put a tweet out with some things that I had from a conversation with Bo Jackson on the record, and he said that he'd been told it was going to be a 2-back class. And I got a lot of likes and I got a lot of comments, but I did get 1 like from a guy with gigantic arms named Carlos Laughlin. So my assumption is, at least at this moment, it is a 2-back class. So I don't know if they can Jedi mind trick anybody further. I mean, they certainly had to do that with Dontre Wilson and Zeke Elliott, but we'll see.
Well, and Sam Williams-Dixon a year ago, talking to him about that sort of thing, when he was going to be when there was going to be another 3-back class, but I think he's a running back all the way. And you mentioned Carlos Laughlin. Maurice Claret tweeted out a picture of those two together meeting as they were at orientation or moving day of their children to Ohio State as freshmen. Maurice Claret, now a child who is a freshman at Ohio State, could not possibly feel older at this moment, but a tremendous, awesome story for that family. But it hurts my neck and it hurts my knees and it hurts my back.
Yes. Bootzilla, Opelika, Alabama. That's where my dad was born. Didn't think I'd ever hear that on a podcast, unless you'd listen to an Opelika, tourism podcast. Probably not, but yep, we were great high school facility. Let me tell you, great high school facility. And when we were in Alabama, we did get to eat barbecue at Dreamland. I will eventually get around to doing the Hungry Huddle of all of our barbecue stuff. Just life happens, and have not felt very creative.
Are you doing barbecue when you go to Cincinnati for the Justin Hill thing?
I haven't decided yet. I mean, Cincinnati barbecue, what, Montgomery Inn? I mean, I think their sauce is too sweet. I
actually have some Montgomery in the fridge right now. You can go get that at Kroger, just so you know.
Yeah.
Super chat from Omar Austin. Gun to head, would you rather listen to Tom read legal jargon for an hour or listen to a complete dissertation from... We're not talking about politics here, Omar.
We're not talking about politics. All I'm reading is Gun to Tom's Head. That's all I read, and I'm all in favor of it.
I mean, it kind of all sounds the same if you just tune it all out a little bit, and it all sounds the same, and just have it on in the background noise, kind of like white noise, which is also my nickname for Tom. Anyway, let's see. How many total recruits from Kevin Chavis? How many total recruits does OSU take this class, and will they finally get a number 1 class, or does Georgia overtake OSU again? I'm going to say no to the number 1 class, because Alabama and Georgia always just come tearing through October, November, December, and they wait, they sandbag, and then they come through. Now, having David Sanders and Tavian St. Clair and Naeem Alford and Devin Sanchez, it's hard to imagine having those 4 guys in the class and not ending up with the number 1 class. Kevin, what do you think?
Just was sitting here thinking about it as you were talking, as you were white noise. Ohio State normally does not take 29-man classes. So to Kevin Chavis's first question, I'm putting the number at 29. I don't know how some of the other services go about their formula, but Rivals does it on your top 20. So if you have 29, you have a lot of room to push down that kicker in your class, or you have a lot of room to push down that legacy that you're, hoping that, maybe pays off. I don't expect to see Bodkin Miller rise up to like a 4. I think that there's just because of the position change and everything else. But I think that 29 may be the thing to finally put Ohio State over the top and land a number 1 class. Now, I don't think it's going to be unanimous. I think that they might get the number 1 class with like 1 service. And we're not going to talk really about ESPN because
I was going to ask.
It's all over the place. So I do think that if they're able to get Malik Autry and they're able to get David Sanders and they're able to get Phillip Bell and some of these other guys that their top 20, their top core is going to be there. And I don't think we're going to see Ohio State really take a lot of quote unquote 3-star types. So I think their average star rating is going to be up there too. So probably setting myself up for disappointment, but I'm going to say yes, but it's not going to be unanimous.
And they're always near the top 1, 2, or 3 in average ranking per recruit, at least in like the 24/7 composite. They just don't ever take as many guys necessarily as everybody else, or it's not like the Tressel days when they would take 17 to Alabama's 28 or whatever, but they've increased it over the years, but they're still not necessarily going to have it more than the other guys near the top. Jackson Johnson that says here, the 3 things I always try to avoid discussing are politics, religion, and the Great Pumpkin. Now, I would argue in some households, religion and the Great Pumpkin are the same thing. So those are just 2 things. And also in some households, politics and religion are the same thing. So I think that's all just one thing. And also, if you talk about that, you eventually just sound like the adults in the Charlie Brown stuff. So yes.
Alexander Dilworth, what's your take on the Tom reading ads for Bear Paint versus ads for clear eye drops?
I don't have any particular takes. What I don't want to hear Tom do an ad read for is the clear eye drops is fine, but the ones where you hear him talking about I can't have tear ducts anymore, I can't create my own eye moisture. Like I don't need to hear Tom talking about eye moisture. So maybe I don't want clear eye drops.
That or Tux medicated pads. We don't need that either. Don't need that.
Well, anything else? Should we go ahead and?
Well, we are closing in on an hour, so we'll take this 8 more minutes, and then we'll get on with our days.
Kevin then says, so top 1 through 3, yes. Ohio State never takes 28 or more recruits, and what did they end up taking last year? Like 21, I think, including Julian Sayin, and they fell a little bit short of 85. I don't.
Because
what is the reason
they lost? They lost the receiver to Oregon. They lost
Jeremiah McClellan.
Yeah, Jeremiah McClellan. They lost the running back to Miami. He's St. Thomas Aquinas. I can't remember the name is drawing.
Yeah, Mark Fletcher. Jordan Lyle.
Jordan Lyle. That's it. I was going to say Byron Lewis. That would be the running back that Tony Alford would lose this year if things change.
And there's still going to be decommitments this year because there always are, so it's just part of the game, part of the process. And we are still not quite 6 months out from signing day, but a lot is going to happen. I'm with you, Kevin. Go over 28. And if there's no reason for unless the only reason is if you can't find 28 players, you can't find the last 3 guys that you think can become Ohio State football players, then it's fine. Or if you think you're too young at some positions and you need to get older through the portal. So it's like, we're going to use these three roster spots rather than having 4 freshman receivers or 5 freshman defensive linemen. We're going to make one of those. We're going to use those spots for the transfer portal so that we can only have 4 freshman defensive linemen and a junior or senior defensive lineman. So I think that's the only reason you need to do that. But as we talked about at the start of the show, if you're putting the number at say 35 new players next year, however you get there, it just depends on where you need immediate help. and then that's what you go to the portal for.
And again, this is kind of a perfect storm for Ohio State to have a giant class this year. I think that we'll see as we go through NIL and transfer portal and everything else, more churn. Ohio State really, there were some players that transferred out, but it wasn't like Ohio State lost 20 players or anything like that. But there's going to be a case of, Ohio State, all these draft eligible players came back. So there's going to be more spots there than there normally would be. So I don't know if, we could always say, oh, just go 30 every year and let the chips fall where they may. But I don't think that you can sustain that as a top program. And this is different than the days where Houston Nutt, just to get back to something we talked about on a previous show, is signing 37 guys for Arkansas.
I mean, you've got as many guys as they have right now, and you're still very far out. Do they really have 21 right now, which is what they had last year? So
my bandwidth is so glitchy right now. I've been showing low bandwidth. I don't want to blow up I don't want it to kill the show.
No. So they've got 21 right now, which is what they had last year. And there's still, like I said, 6 months to go to December. And then, another month and a half after that to get to February. So they're clearly been more aggressive and there's still room to go. I don't know. Is this class 75% done then? Is that, there's still only 7 or 8 more guys, maybe 7 more guys in this class. It feels like they could do more than that if they wanted to, honestly.
How many drafts do we have of just potential commitment stories? Just sitting around in the admin in case something happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 5, 6. I mean, and I'm going to let everybody in on a secret. I do not have a David Sanders one written yet. Maybe before I have a Friday beer, I may do that. I don't know. We'll see. But one of the other things really showing you breaking the fourth wall here, it's hard to write them sometimes because you don't know when the kid is going to commit in comparison to other players, and that could blow up your story. Or you're just writing the most generic, so-and-so is a Buckeye, more later. Okay, well, that's, 7 words. That's not going to work.
8, add breaking.
Yes.
9, add news. Boom. I'm a pro.
Let's see. We're 57. Mika Hanna. Well, let me get here to this one from Alexander. You see Ohio State circling back with missed offensive line prospects after the season starts. Also, if we don't land David Sanders, is the OL coach on the hot seat? I'll try and go quickly here so we can we don't get bogged down. I think there are a lot of people who are getting frustrated that Ohio State is not recruiting well enough at offensive line. But conversely, 2026 is going to be so awesome with Sam Greer and Will Conroy and Adam Guthrie and Max Riley and Deron Parks out of West Virginia. If you make a move, you submarine your chances there. I'm not saying you don't land a couple of them, but you're not landing all of them. So no, I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that people are going to be pissed, though, if that's the case. And as for circling back with offensive linemen, I think it just really depends on where things are. You can't. I'm not ready to predict anything because we can't predict decommitments. We can't predict a lot of stuff. I mean, they showed their willingness with Jake Cook. So nobody else has the benefit of being able to come off of a camp performance to do that. But Ohio State has to hit its number.
Well, and I also think next year could be a portal-heavy offensive line class. If you're looking at replacing your left guard, your center, and now you could just do that with Carson Hinsman, I guess. But your right tackle, there's going to be some guys that you're looking to replace, and how well will they feel about having the guys that are on campus right now doing that next year? I think we'll find that out. But this is such a huge recruitment for Justin Fryer, the David Sanders thing. It could save everything. It could end everything for him. But also it's going to come down to, you can lose David Sanders and put a hell of an offensive line on the field this year and see development, and people will be upset with losing this guy right now. But if they're rushing for 240 yards a game or whatever, I don't know how you can be upset with the offensive line coach. Now, that being said, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are going to have a much better idea of what Justin Frye has contributed to this team and this offense than we will. And, you can look at the running game and it's fantastic, but they'll know better how much is them, how much is him, and all of the development thing. But the ideal, you land David Sanders, that carries right into the 2026 thing. And now you're cooking with some hot grease, and you're keeping all of those Ohio kids. You're going into West Virginia to get Parks, and who knows who else you're getting from around the nation. But if you don't get Sanders and things don't go well, I think you can still do well with the Ohio kids, because 2026 is Ohio heavy. But like Kevin said, you're probably not going to get all of those. And who do you lose? And where does that guy go? And what does he do for them instead of Ohio State? Does he go to Michigan and now they've got an All-American left tackle or something like that? So it's all in your hands, David Sanders. Don't blow it.
He's saying all the right things right now. Super chat, Omar Austin, Big Daddy Kahana featuring White Noise. There you go.
Tom's going to be thrilled when he finds out his new name is White Noise. Treebuck with the super chat. Thank you very much for that. Thanks for the quick updates, and have a great weekend, guys. You too as well. Enjoy the beautiful Ohio weather that we all are experiencing. Stay safe over this pre-July 4th weekend, a first July 4th weekend, and then, of course, the next July 4th weekend after that. We'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank you all for the super chats. Thank you for the regular chats. Thanks for keeping it civil, as always, in the chat. And if you have not yet, go ahead and hit the thumbs up. We would appreciate that. And, of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Join up, say hello to us there, see how we're doing, and we'll see how you're doing. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.